Thanks, everybody. Welcome to this volunteer-led training on getting your elected officials to act, currently known as the Citizen Lobby for Action Team. My name is Marie Henselder-Kimmel. I'm a chapter coordinator, state coordinator from the state of New Jersey for American Promise, and my co-leader is Vicki Barnes. Who's the state coordinator for Minnesota. And we're very happy that Sam Daly-Harris is joining us. He's our citizen empowerment mentor who's been working with us in American Promise in our citizen advocacy, and he's our mentor for our Run for Advocacy team tonight. Our team meets every month on the second Thursday of the month at 7:30, and you will, through your registration for this meeting, you'll get the links for the further meetings. So you don't have to keep re-registering for each meeting if you plan to continue to join us. But thanks for learning how you can improve your effectiveness in getting your elected officials to act. We are honored to have you all tonight. And if you could, Vicki has put an attendance sheet in the chat. If you could hit that in the chat and put your name in there for us, so we can make sure to send you the follow-up information.
And here's what's going to be happening tonight. We'll start with some inspirational quotes about building political will, which is the crux of what we do when we advocate for the amendment with our elected officials. We'll review the champion scale that Sam Daly-Harris developed as a measuring stick of our elected officials' level of support from opposed to champion. We'll problem solve individual challenges you've had with these different levels of the champion scale with Sam's guidance. And our action items will be to continue to work on getting meetings directly with your legislator during December and January. Most of us had requested those meetings as next steps during our lobby day meetings in May. And we'll also discuss another op-ed or letter to the editor drive for the January anniversary of the Citizens United decision the Supreme Court gifted us with. So a reminder, please put your name in the attendance sheet so we can keep track of who is here. And back to you, Marie.
Vicki, your attendance sheet is view only.
Oh, I thought I fixed that. Okay.
Okay, we'll get it fixed. And I'll
let me go back and do it again.
That's okay. So tonight is our 6th session of the Getting Elected Officials to Act Citizen Lobby for Action team. And we're going to share some inspiration for our work that informs the approach that we have to take in order to get our elected officials to support our work to get money out of politics. Sam just did a presentation by Zoom. He didn't Zoom across the ocean and come back, but he did a presentation for Glasgow University in conjunction with the COP26 conference last weekend. And he began with 4 inspiring quotes that he's going to share with us tonight. Thanks, Sam.
Okay, great. Thanks. And hi, everyone. Yes, so I was getting ready for this talk on Saturday, and I was getting this barrage of quotes about political will. And there was particularly on climate, but it's the same thing. Everything we do is in order to create the political will for a government run by people, not money. So I'm going to share these quotes. I've adapted a couple at the end to give you the flavor for our own issue. This first one was an op-ed last week by Medea Benjamin and Nicholas Davies from Code Pink. And part of their op-ed, they wrote, "The science is clear. The solutions to climate crisis are readily available. It's only the political will that's lacking. This must be supplied by ordinary people from all walks of life." And at the bottom of these slides, I've got political will supplied by ordinary people. How? And that's really what we're going to focus on tonight and always. Then I was sent this interview where Al Gore was interviewed by John Kerry at Yale in 2017. And in his remarks, Gore said, "I want to recruit you. We can do this. People doubt we have the political will. Just remember that political will is itself a renewable resource. Go out and renew it." And then I write at the bottom, renew the political will. How? And that's what this call is about. And really, everything we do. He also said, use your voice to win the conversation on climate. Be kind, be generous, react to deniers with goodwill, and give them the gift of listening. Win the conversations. And I wrote at the bottom, react to climate deniers with goodwill. How? And you could replace, as I am in this next slide in a moment. Last Thursday, a week ago, I was listening to Paul Hawken speak. He wrote the book, or he's edited the book Drawdown. And he said, it's estimated that between 98 and 99% of humanity is disengaged. He said, I know your friends might be engaged, maybe, but between 98 and 99% of humanity is disengaged. From the Earth's point of view, there's no difference between a climate denier and someone who understands the problem, but actually doesn't do anything. And then at the bottom, I wrote, engage with those who understand. How? And I'm going to do it once more here. This is with my edition of our work. Between 98 and 99% of humanity is disengaged. From democracy's point of view, there's no difference between someone who denies unregulated money's impact on our democracy and someone who understands the problem, but actually doesn't do anything. Engage those who understand. How? So, you know, when in Minnesota, they table at county fair, that's building the political will. When Marie's group got the congressman to sign the op-ed on Constitution Day that was read by, thousands of readers, that's a step of building the political will. That's what we do here. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. And actually that, when you converted that last slide, it's reminiscent of Larry Lessig's quote, which is 97% of people think there's too much money in politics, but 91%, or it's maybe even higher than that, believe we can't do anything about it. So it's the same problem, right?
Yeah.
If we have to get that activation. So we're going to remind ourselves of the champion scale. And to do that, I'm sorry, let me just go back here. And we're going to go to the present view. So this is the champion scale that Sam had developed to use as a measuring stick for where our legislators are along this sequence of support. So certainly they start out opposed, and then we can move them up to neutral, and then we can move them from neutral to supporter, or probably in our amendment work, co-sponsor most likely. But that's not where that stops. We can move them up to being an advocate, where they do more with us, or a leader and spokesperson, or then again to a champion. So what I'd like to do is to move on, and let's just read the definitions of these, because I think we have a lot of new people to our team, and I just want to make sure everyone understands the definitions that we're using here. And Heather, I'm going to pick on you first to read opposed, please.
I think we can agree that the farthest you can get from being a champion on our issue is being opposed. A member of Congress or other elected officials who are opposed might say, I don't support that, or my constituents wouldn't support that, or what you're talking about isn't even a problem, or I agree that it is a problem, but I can't support your solution.
Great. And Nancy, would you read this one?
Sure. Neutral or uninformed. The next level up from opposed is neutral or uninformed. Someone who is neutral might say, I need more information, or can you explain it to me more fully? Or could you give me more materials to read so I can make a more informed decision?
Don, can I get you to read the top one, supporter, please?
Sure. Supporter, the next level up from neutral is supporter. A supporter might say, I'll co-sponsor that, or I think that is a good solution and I can get behind that.
Great. And who else do we have? Barb or Steve Miller, can you do the advocate, please?
The next level up from supporter is advocate. An advocate might say, now that I am a co-sponsor, I think it is important to build support for this. Or I'm going to talk with others in Congress about supporting it. Or could you help me draft an op-ed for our paper so we can educate my constituents?
Great. Oops, sorry. And let's go back one here. And I'm sorry. And how about who else do we have? Judy, can you do the top, please? Leader and spokesperson.
Or a leader and spokesperson. The next level up from advocate is a leader and spokesperson. A leader and spokesperson might be the lead sponsor on a bill or the initiator of a sign-on letter or a caucus on our issue.
Great. And Vicki, I'm going to let you take on the champion.
Champion. The final level is champion. I don't like it when groups cheapen the term champion and call anyone who does anything good a champion. And champion is someone who is so passionate.
Sorry. I'm going, maybe I'm going the wrong way. I'm going the wrong way. This is not good.
Vicki doesn't have this memorized.
There we go.
Passionate. I got lost after passionate, but they're out in front. They're out in front of American Promise and pushing us to catch up. They might say, I have arranged for 5 of my Democratic colleagues and 5 of my Republican colleagues to host town hall meetings on overturning Citizens United. And I need your help finding speakers for some of those 10 cities. That's a call I'd like to have.
Yes, I was just going to say the same. Absolutely going to say the same. All righty. So as you can see, we have to think of our elected official as an opportunity or a possibility that we can take this person and persuade them to move up the champion scale, just one level at a time. So it's a relationship building process, and it's a step-by-step type of a development. It's not going to happen overnight, I can promise you that. And we also have to avoid taking the position that our congressperson or our senator or elected official on a state level is so good or so bad that it's just not worth taking any further actions with that person or making any further outreach to that person, because as we can see, they can always move up a little bit further. So if we're not making motions to get those people to move up further, whether they're so good or so bad in our opinion, then we're not building political will to tie it back to what we started off with, with the inspiration at the beginning. So what I'm going to do is we had a number of people sign on, and I wasn't familiar with some wasn't really sure what their level of experience in advocacy was. So we picked 3 cases to illustrate different key points on the champion scale, to go through what the tactics are that best work at those various stages. And then I think we'll probably have time for further discussion so we can get some individual cases, to be you can solicit your particular problems that you're having. So I'm going to go back to sharing here. Oops, sorry. Now we need to go back to all those slides that I skipped to before. So this is our opposed elected official. It's a Minnesota state senator who's a Republican, a long-term incumbent, more than 18 years, in a safe rural red seat. Minnesota does not yet have a non-binding resolution, and the reason to approach this person is to build support in the state legislature to get a non-binding resolution. This is actually Vicki, who's going to be our petitioner. They've been working on this relationship for 4 years. They've only succeeded in having 1 meeting with the senator, and have written about 6 letters to the editor in the last 4 years. And despite many attempts, have not been able to achieve a second meeting with the senator. And the staff called back and gave a message, no, he's not going to meet you again, and he's opposed. So that's where we start. And Sam and Vicki, take it away.
Yes, I'm going to ask a few more questions, and Vicki, you decide with me. I might go to the group first rather than you in terms of what would you do. But before I do that, can you say a little bit more about, I don't know, have you done a tabling in his district and collected citizen petitions, citizen pledges. Tell us a little bit more about what you have done in this particular district.
We actually approached the County Board of Commissioners and asked them to pass a resolution calling on the state and Congress to act. And I had a large group of people that were working on that. And the commissioners, for various reasons, decided not to vote, which was good because they would have voted against it, and invited us back. However, after that, the group kind of fell apart, and we've had an election there in the county since then, and it looks promising to go back. So that is in the works right now. So they did work together for that. They're a great group, but they're not able to organize as well, I guess, as they should be. But the great letters to the editor. They just don't call out the senator.
Okay, great. Let me ask one other question, and then I'm going to open it up to the group. And the question is, imagine this is your state rep, or you currently or someday have someone like this. I want you to brainstorm what you would do. But Vicki, before we do that, let me ask you this. Is there, I think you were suggesting it was a conservative county council or a Republican county council. Was there one of the members who was supportive clearly, or no, it was sort of mixed and mostly opposed?
Two things. So first of all, there was one that was very enthusiastic that this was democracy in work and really excited about it. But there were two others. One accused us of working for George Soros, and the other one was completely uninformed about the amendment process, and we did not have an opportunity to educate him. However, I should have said about our work in Wright County, we tabled at the Wright County Fair. So we did get petitions signed by attendees there, and the number of conservative pledge signers were outnumbered the more liberal pledge signers 2-1. So we do have some good backup information to go back with if we can get a meeting.
Okay, great. And is it a county council of 3 or is it more than
5?
5? Okay, so let's open it up. I saw that there was a comment from Laura, which was, it seems we're leaving out a final 1 or 2 steps: primary, the rep, or run for office yourself. And we can get to that. We call that another different session. Right now, let's say I don't know if the word is stuck, but we have this one. And rather than throwing up our arms, and we could run for office, what would you do? Who would brainstorm? You live in Wright County. This is your situation up to this point, not forever. What are some steps that you could do that might get the attention in a positive way of this conservative state rep and quote unquote, bring him more on our side? Who would like to go first? You can either push the reactions button and raise hand, or you can put your camera on and wave your hands like this. And let's see if we have any folks that want to go first. I see Nancy Morgan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Nancy?
Yeah, Vicki, did you find out who finances them, who donates to them? I was wondering, one of the things that American Promise is trying to do is get business on board, so you not only have constituent voters, but also business as a means of influencing legislators.
Not at this point. We've not done that yet. But he's very secure in his position. When we talk to people out there, they know he'll win whether they vote for him or not.
And do you think he wins by 10 or 20 points, or you're not quite sure?
Probably by 30 or 40 points.
Okay, great. Who else? Raise your hand.
And a donor can be an influencer.
Yeah.
If it's a business person, it could be an influencer who, if they agree with your point of view, our point of view, then they could actually, say, hey, I think this is a good idea. And it would help me compete against bigger businesses. I'd like to see this happen.
And where you're saying that, what we understood was they met with him once, the aide called back or whatever and said, he doesn't support this, he's opposed and doesn't feel it's useful to meet with you. So that donor you were talking about, Marie, is also a potential door opener to a door that seems closed. Who else? What else might we do?
Laura made a suggestion in the chat, meet with other political groups and activist groups to build pressure.
Okay, good. Laura, do you want to unmute yourself and say a little bit more about that? What kinds of ideas you have? Oh, microphone's broken. Okay, fine. So who else? I'm asking you to brainstorm. You're in Wright County, Minnesota. You have a bit of a closed door and you're looking for ideas for opening that door. Who would go next? Oh, great. Heather, unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Are there any groups that he works with, like charitable outreach, any people in those organizations that you might be able to find some overlap with that might be able to get in front of him just because of their connection?
And maybe it's something you need to look into a little bit more.
Yeah,
but
I can, that's a good task for the group to explore. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's a little bit of that, go to their website or Google them to find out their news releases talking about the things they're proud of, that they're happy about, and looking for things that they're proud of, that you're actually proud of too, that you could legitimately thank them for. And well, this actually is getting to another point. Let me raise this point, and then we'll open it up to everyone else again. Let's see, Vicky said there've been about 6 letters to the editor published in the area, but they don't call him out, meaning mention him by name. And so I want to underscore this part of it. The whole thing about finding something that he's done that you really like, and in a letter to the editor, basically saying, I'm really proud of State Senator so-and-so for his leadership on X. It really means a lot to our community. And it would be great if he could bring that same kind of leadership to the issue of money and politics. So I'm naming him, I'm thanking him, and asking that whatever that thank you action is, if he could bring the similar kind of leadership over to this issue. Then the state senator says, okay, well, wait a minute. These people are not just talking to each other. They're talking to the community. They're not bashing me over the head. They're looking into what I am into. And they seem to be reasonable. I ought to meet with them. There's a little opening of the door that way. Anyone else, some other ideas about this predicament? One was find out who his big donors are and whether any of them are aligned, or we could enroll them and they could open a door and go with us, basically. Another is writing letters to the editor that acknowledge him for something and hope that he brings that same leadership. Let's go to Marty and then Justin.
Sam, here's an idea that I heard through the Pachamama Alliance, which I think is a group that you're familiar with, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. And they introduced us to something called the you, me, we conversation, where the idea is identifying something a little bit along the lines of what you said, what you can find positive about the person that you're reaching out to, and to acknowledge them for, to show some appreciation for, then introduce yourself, and then talk about what it is that we could do together. So that's one idea. Second idea is check them out on LinkedIn. You can find a lot of their affiliations on LinkedIn, maybe a former employer that they worked with, and also you can find people that they're already linked up to, and maybe that could be a door opener to connect you. So those are two quick ideas that
Very
came to
good.
mind.
Actually, I don't know if you're on, where are you located, Marty?
I'm in New Jersey.
Okay, great. The quote I did from Paul Hawken was from the Pachamama event last Thursday, earlier. I don't know if
I
you
was
heard
on
it.
that event too, but
Okay,
I
good.
was on another call. I had to
Okay.
jump in to leave the other one to join this. And a third idea, another group that we recently got active with is called the Green Faith organization. And actually they're headquartered in New Jersey, or were
That's
up
right.
until recently. And so we brought an idea to our local state representatives, and we had people from 9 different faiths there. And of course, if you're dealing with conservative people, they tend to be, receptive to hearing about initiatives from people of faith. So building a coalition and then bringing that coalition as a group to the meeting can really make a difference too.
Fantastic. So it's educating faith leaders in the district, the state district. That's great. Thank you so much, Marty. Justin, you want to unmute yourself and let us know where you're based?
Yeah, I'm in Pennsylvania right now.
Great.
And so I think my idea kind of builds on what some other people were saying of kind of taking indirect or circuitous routes to representative. But this would specifically be the idea of leveraging people that are known to be influential to the representative. So it might be like family members, friends, business associates, anybody that the legislator is going to listen to for advice on like a more personal level, and trying to contact them and use them to kind of leverage the idea more onto the representative.
Great, fantastic.
Thank you,
Go ahead.
Justin. We also have Laura in the chat. She was able to put her idea in the chat. She
Go.
says, since getting money out of politics is favored by most Americans, can you use his position opposing it as a way to educate his constituents? So that would be actually,
Can you say anything about that, Vicki? At the Wright County Fair, did you work it that way, or did you do it differently, or?
Well, when his constituents signaled their support for the resolution, the amendment, I would ask them if they've met with their legislator, and their responses would be, and it's sad, and this is consistent, he won't listen, he doesn't care, he won't do anything. So there is not a lot of civic engagement. They've been affected by the money. They feel like without money, they're not going to be heard. So that is what we have to try to overcome. But I think that in putting together all your ideas, if I could get, when they, the constituents are great letter writers. So I just have to grab them and make sure they write it in a way that can call him out in a positive way, as you mentioned, and that he'll see, okay, these people aren't going away, but they're not beating me up, and maybe we could get another pathway through that route.
Let me take what you just said, call him out, and I'm going to change it slightly to pull him out and draw him out. And I'm going to play off something Marty said. And some of you know this a lot. A lot of times when I'm working with a group who's meeting with someone that they know is opposed, I'll have them write these 3 questions down. We know you don't support an amendment overturning Citizens United. What would it take to change your mind? Can you say more about that?
That's one question.
Question number 2. Can you say more about that? Question number 3. Why do you think that is? It's a real deep listening exercise. And sometimes when you get a little lower and a little deeper and a little deeper, you uncover, okay, they got all the caca out, and you get to an openness that wasn't there at first before you listened for a while.
And sometimes, Sam, when you say what would change your mind, that question can sometimes give you your avenues to the influencers who will be able to change
Yeah.
their mind. You might
Yeah.
not be the right messenger, your group might not be the right messenger, but to build a
Yes.
relationship, you can identify the influencers that would be able to build that relationship. You can sometimes get that from that question and
Yeah.
from doing the deep listening.
Yeah. Well, let me tell a quick story. We might move on to the next category.
We
But
need to.
Jay Butera, a CCL volunteer extraordinaire from Pennsylvania, decided years ago, maybe 6 or something, that he wanted to start their first chapter in Miami, and he wanted to create a climate solutions caucus. So he met with he would fly down to Florida, and he met with a Republican who said, he essentially said, what would it take to change your mind? And the congressman said, well, if you could get all the mayors involved on board. So we've got the mayor of Miami, North Miami, Miami Beach, North Miami Beach, Coral Gables. And he came back to the congressman and he said, well, here are letters signed by these mayors. And the congressman said, well, if you could get the chambers of commerce on board. So he went to the Miami Beach, North Miami, Coral Gables, chambers of commerce. He came back to this members of Congress with them on board. And the member of Congress was, in fact, the lead Republican on this climate solutions caucus. It was a great example of what would it take to change your mind. You're kind of marching orders and you go out and do that. Of course, you do that and you say, okay, here's some more orders. But it's an example of that question really fulfilled big time. I mean, he told me once he ended up with breakfast meeting with, I want to say his name was Jose Ferrer or Maurice Ferrer, one of the retired mayors of Miami. And he just opened up his book and kind of, either introduced him to or called on his behalf or gave him the contact information for all of them. And it was an unexpected opportunity.
All right, we do need to do the review for the opposed elected official, which I'm going to show a screen for, but I do want to say that that Sam's 3 questions will be in the follow-up email, and they are part of what we go over. So let's do this. Sorry. So here are our tactics for our opposed elected. As Sam mentioned several times, a letter to the editor mentioning the elected in a positive light. Our elected is a leader on X issue. I would like to see that same leadership on our issue. You want to make sure you send the published letter to the editor, to the aide or the staffer. And in 2 to 3 days, call to check that it was seen. Don't just assume that the email went through and that it was seen. Get your letter to the editor on social media, tag the elected official, try to get it shared, and it's probably not going to happen on the first one, but like Sam said, if you can get a few of these kind of letters to the editor out there, then they start seeing you as, well, this isn't somebody that's opposing me. This is somebody that's trying to give me information, a little bit more open to establishing a relationship and hearing what you have to say. We mentioned, Vicki had actually done this. If you had a local resolution passed in their district or you're working on it, bring a member of that council to present the resolution to the elected. If you have no local resolution yet, consider working on a local resolution to have some of these local elected officials to be able to bring to that legislator, whether it be a state legislator or a congressperson or a senator. And then identify influencers who came up over and over again. You want to recruit them to meet jointly with the elected with you and your group, or separately too. You can ask the elected or a staffer who has influence with the elected and research the district better. Campaign endorsers, the largest employer in the district, largest campaign donor in the district, what member of what faith community, like Justin mentioned. So these are some good tactics to take if you can't get that second meeting, or if you can't get that first meeting. So I want to move on to someone who an elected official who actually technically is not neutral, but we're on them as they're neutral, because many of us are in this situation. There were 220 sponsors of the Democracy for All Amendment, which is the name of the amendment the resolution that we're mostly working on, in the last Congress. Right now, that was HJ Res 2. It's numbered HJ Res 1 right now. There are 89. So there are a lot of members who co-sponsored last time, and they haven't re-upped to co-sponsor this time. And this particular legislator is in exactly, this congressman is in exactly that situation. So let's go over that situation. So this is our neutral, quote unquote, lean supporter elected official. Representative Tom Malinowski, he's a Democrat from New Jersey, 7th District. He's a second term congressman in a purple to red leaning district. New Jersey did pass a non-binding resolution calling for the amendment back in 2012. They've had about a 3.5-year relationship with Representative Malinowski starting in his campaign for initial election. They have had 2 meetings with staff in the last 2 years, which was most recently Lobby Day in May. 2 letters to the editor in the last 2 years. And he did co-sponsor HJ Res 2 in the last session, but hasn't yet co-sponsored HJ Res 1. So this is Heather Santos. Heather.
Yes.
Are you unmuted? There you go.
Yeah, we met with a member of his staff. He supported it in the past. We said, we would really love if he signed on to the most recent legislation, and asked for a couple more things, and then crickets. We've done follow-ups. As a matter of fact, I grabbed somebody from Marie's group because Barb and Steve's son grew up with this staffer and said, I'm not getting anywhere. Somebody else from my group's not getting anywhere. See if you reach out to him and just get an answer, something. Nothing, crickets. And again, I got him to sign the American Promise Pledge, and he signed on last go round, but not this go round, and we're not getting anywhere.
So let me just say a couple things, because there's similarities between opposed and neutral. And there's some, I think, differences from supporter to beyond to advocate. The question that I want to ask generically is about faith leaders in his district, or major supporters in his district, or state rep, state senators, city council. Is there a largest city in his district? I don't know his district in my head, but
NJ7 is not exactly a,
it's all over the place kind of.
Yeah, and it goes all the way out towards next to Pennsylvania. It's not.
Would you consider there to be a couple of significant papers in his district? Meaning, for me,
The Star Ledger.
Star Ledger. Okay.
Yes.
It's statewide. And is there a local one where 10,000 constituents read this weekly paper, or 15,000 read this other?
There are a lot of little papers in the area, but I don't know know what their circulation is. And that's where I've gotten published is the local, it definitely in his district.
Yeah.
But I don't know what their circulation is exactly.
Right. Okay.
The Observer Tribune.
Okay, good. I mean, I think the whole notion of Malinowski is someone, I don't know the details, for whom it should be easy to find something you like about what he has done.
Oh, and that's what I've put in previous.
And writing about that in the letter briefly, and hoping he brings that same kind of leadership to this issue, that should be quite easy, but then making sure it's tagged to him on Twitter and sent to his aide and followed up briefly on the phone to make sure the aide saw it, et cetera, where you're not only getting the communication, but you're leveraging it too. You're not assuming or hoping that because it was published, people who need to see it saw it, kind of thing. But, yeah, who else? Heather, anything that comes to your mind in terms of next steps, thing we used to do and maybe we should come back to it, something new, anything like that?
Normally I would just try to set up another meeting, but in the time of COVID, it's just a little more fraught. And I'm wondering if maybe because he's going to be in a tough reelection. I'm wondering if maybe he'd be more willing to meet with us, because this is certainly a popular issue and I know his opponent doesn't support it.
Yeah, well, Marie, this is what's coming next in a sense in the agenda, which is a campaign to get these meetings. So, he's your elected official, and whether it's election or not election, it's his job to hear from and respond to constituents. So we shouldn't feel shy in any kind of way about asking for a meeting. David, you are unmuted. You want to go ahead?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So it looks like everyone is pretty much talking about having direct meetings with these folks. And I have the notion that 10 or 100 warm bodies is worth more than 1,000 or 10,000 letter readers. Perhaps one of the best ways to communicate with these fellows, they all have public events, is to meet them in a public event publicly, is to be a member of the audience who gets to ask a question with 100 or a few hundred people listening, most of whom are on our side once they hear what the issue is.
Yeah, very good. Let me just say this. I'm assuming you all might know better than I that where there used to be lots of face-to-face town hall meetings, they're a bit more online these days. But let me just add to what you said, David. I always urge people to get there early if it's a physical town hall and try and get a moment with the congressperson or state rep before they go to the stage, or try and get a moment with them when they come down from the stage before they get in the car and go to the next event, or be positioned by the microphone to be one of the early question askers, and yet don't ask a question that corners them, but it kind of acknowledges them and lets them expound on the issue that, our issue, basically. Vicki, why don't we go to you right now? And I don't know if you, Marie, want to close out with the other issues that are on the table. Vicki?
Well, just really quick, sometimes maybe Heather going old school and just getting like a half a dozen of your group to call, because the people who answer the phone call keep track of how many people call for certain things. So if you just have people who are going to call, different days, I'm going to call on Tuesdays and Thursdays for the next, till I see his name on the bill, or, that's not really harassing. That's just, just they keep track of them. So if they get 10 calls for one bill, that's a big thing. So it probably wouldn't take as long as you think.
Great.
And harassment is legal.
And maybe get a friend to listen in on the call that you make, so that then they can hang up and make the call themselves because they feel a little, it's not so terrible or difficult. Anyone else? I mean, at the bottom line, the congressperson ought to have a staffer whose portfolio is this, and let's call it related issues. And we really want to build a relationship with that staffer, not a once a year call relationship, not a bug them every other day relationship, but a legitimate relationship where something's in the news or something's in our letter to the editor. That's a good reason for this call. let's go to Justin. Justin, if you'll unmute, you're good.
Yep. Well, so one of the things that we're talking about is the media interaction with these representatives. And I'm just wondering if there has been any kind of campaign activity directed specifically to identifying media personnel that would be amenable to kind of asking questions about the 28th Amendment to any Congress people or other representatives that they might interact with.
I'm going to say one thing and then open it up to anyone else. I found that the Star Ledger from time to time is quite open to a letter to the editor that mentions a small number who are supporters of X, and shouldn't the rest of the New Jersey, in this case, New Jersey delegation come on board? It's informative. Very often the newspaper letters to the editor doesn't know who's on and who's not, and it's a good thing. So they can often help in a related way, Justin, by educating the public through your letter to the editor in that way.
In fact, I'm not sure, Heather, if you did forward Andy Kim's op-ed for Constitution Day to Malinowski's staffer, but he calls on the rest of Congress to uphold the rights to equal citizenship by co-sponsoring the amendment resolution. So if you have, that's another way, but certainly I know that the editor at the Star Ledger, Tom Moran, is very interested in that because they have written several editorials recently on dark money. Particularly, they've been focusing on the disinformation commercials that have been out about the various pieces of legislation and targeting, twisting the positions of different legislators to get outraged phone calls.
Let me throw this out there. Marie, you and or others on your team have a great relationship with Andy Kim's assistant staff director or whatever.
She's the chief of staff.
Chief of staff. Asking Andy Kim's chief of staff to talk to Tom Malinowski's chief of staff is not irregular. And it's an easy ask, actually, given that it's nothing that Malinowski would oppose. But you can look at different leverage points, and that would be another example.
Yeah. Yeah, and just I'm going to answer Gary. Gary left a message in the chat about educating the electorate. Yes, Gary, that's 100% important, and that's another whole arm of our advocacy, which we definitely do. But this particular team is working around getting our elected officials to act, and what different as citizen groups of advocates, what things can we do to get attention and get their attention and get them to meet with us and then use their voice to advance our amendment resolution. Justin, did you have another comment, or did you already add your comment?
I just wanted to ask, I guess, one other thing somewhat related to media engagement, and that's is there any kind of archive or catalog or library of communications that have been made on behalf of American Promise, along with maybe some record of how successful they were?
Now, tell me if I'm wrong, Marie. Most of those communications would have been from the local or state chapter to the not from American Promise headquarters to the member of Congress.
Correct.
And I assume there's some good collection of what those communications have been.
Yeah, all of our published media we submit to American Promise, and then they don't highlight every single piece of it, but much of it gets highlighted on Facebook and Twitter, and sometimes excerpts get put into the newsletter and so on and so forth. But in terms of what we, particularly in New Jersey, have sent to our legislators, then we have that, and then we kind of know the history of, well, this sort of worked, this didn't work. We just kind of have an idea person by person. We don't have anybody compiling that on a more meta basis at this point.
But when we get back to face-to-face meetings, bringing in all the letters or op-eds that have been published this year, or Vicky, I think, doing this when they get all the citizen pledges signed, bring those in to the state rep for whom that's their constituents. So it's kind of our gig to gather that. So even though we might have told them about it along the year, but as we're coming in, make it real again in those kinds of ways.
So Sam, if I could, I'd like to do the review. We're running, it's a great conversation, and I think that is absolutely wonderful. And I think at this point, because we usually close at 8:30, we have two options. We can finish up at 8:30 and then carry on this, this exercise in our next meeting next month. Or if people are amenable to spending 10 extra minutes, then we can go through, because the intention was to go through a third scenario of a legislator who's more of an advocate, and what do you do to work with them?
I recommend that we just go to the action item, and it may take 5 or 10 minutes and we'll end 5 minutes late, but that we leave the supporter to some other time in the name of time. Because I think the action item, the getting the meetings, and in the scheme of things, the anniversary of Citizens United is something I think we'd want to just not rush over.
Okay, well then let's just do the review. I'm sorry. Is that you?
No,
Vicky?
you're right. I agree.
All right, let me just do our review. So this is our tactics for our neutral. If they're simply uninformed, which isn't our situation here, then provide the educational resources that they ask for. And sometimes if you're in a meeting with a staffer that's new to the situation, or there's some new development, new language in an amendment resolution, then obviously you want to provide anything that you need to provide to inform them. Again, letter to the editor, mention the electing in a positive light. This is says exactly the same thing as the previous slide, because it works. It really does work. I wasn't using this very much until the last 6 months when we started going over it in this team advocacy meeting, and I can tell you this works wonders. Number 3, if you've had a local resolution passed, same thing, bring the member of that council to present the resolution to the elected. And again, identify influencers to recruit to meet jointly with the elected. These things do start to repeat because the same tactics are helpful no matter where they are. It's just they get you to different places. So at this point, Vicky, why don't we start into our...
Okay, sure. As mentioned in the beginning of the meeting, we'd like to remind everyone that we set a goal of achieving follow-up face-to-face meetings with the legislators whose staff met us for our lobby day meetings in May. You can request a meeting before the recess. Recess is scheduled to begin the week of December 13th, and we think it'll last until the second week of January. That's what it usually does, but it's hard to find a definitive calendar right now. But by reaching out now to your staff member contact, you can start the process to be able to meet in district at the time of the recess by being early to request to be included on the calendar. Of course, we'll very likely not be able to meet in person, but face-to-face on Zoom is close enough. Has anybody gotten any appointments yet? I know most of you are new on this call, but does anybody have any appointments scheduled? Nope. Okay, still time. And then let's use the upcoming anniversary of the Supreme Court decision, the Citizens United decision that's coming up on January 21st to inspire and motivate us in getting that meeting, and or to write a letter to the editor or an op-ed. We don't need to mention the decision specifically. Sometimes that's a political thing, so you don't want to say anything about the decision in your letter specifically. But just let that knowledge that the anniversary is coming up, which is the 12th anniversary, and let that fuel our fire to push the issue of money in politics to the forefront. And in those places where we had school board races, actually with nasty arguments about the teaching of inclusion and equity in our classrooms, this is a perfect opportunity to tie that special interest money that was pushing the division in our communities into a nice letter to the editor or op-ed. So getting a meeting, getting a piece published in a local newspaper are opportunities to help move our elected officials up the champion scale, no matter where they are on the scale. If you need help in getting started, you can refer to our info hub document in the trainings from the trainings we did in August and September for Constitution Day, and I'll put a link to that Google Doc in the chat. So are there any questions or comments about these efforts? Or there's a lot of new people on the call. Any questions about American Promise in general? David?
It's sort of a question about American Promise in general.
Okay.
The logo, which or your slogan, which I took a picture of and I've lost it. In any case, having to do with getting money out of politics, and American Promise's approach, which is to reverse or repeal Citizens United by giving Congress the right to vote on a McCain-Feingold again, as if even if they could get it passed, really doesn't address the issue of getting money out of politics. I'm wondering whether or not American Promise shouldn't have different wording as for a constitutional amendment, one that actually had teeth and didn't give an ineffective Congress the right to do something.
It's a great question, and I understand why it might seem that way. So we don't actually have specific amendment language that we are pushing. Congress will be the group that writes the amendment. So we have a general idea of what we're looking for. But when you're concerned about what Congress will do with the amendment, the wording of the amendment will give Congress the guidance they need on what kind of laws they can pass and still be constitutional. For example, if the amendment proposal says, in order to ensure political equality, that means any regulation or laws that are passed that benefits one group or person over another would be unconstitutional. So the wording of the amendment is what will guide Congress in how they can act. But one more important thing, even in Congress, if the amendment is passed and ratified and Congress says we're just fine with this free-for-all that's going on with money, the states can pass their laws.
24 states lost their ability to have state laws regulating campaign finance when Citizens United decision came down. But more importantly, whatever an amendment in order to pass, as you probably know, needs to pass with 2/3 of the senators and 2/3 of the House members voting for it before it goes out to the states. Excuse me, the other way around, right? 3/4. 3/4 and then 2/3 and then 3/4, excuse me. But it has to have that kind of unity. So you can't, what one group might feel has teeth, another group just is going to disagree with, you're not going to get through as an amendment. So there's actually been there was an 18-month initiative done where American Promise met with constitutional lawyers and history professors and business leaders and all kinds of people to talk about what needs to go into the amendment. And that's part of how some of this language has been come up with, and others. There's been an amendment resolution in Congress every single session since 2010 when the Citizens United decision was passed down. And the one that has had the best lifespan and has built the most support is this Democracy for All amendment, which is now HJ Res 1. There's some other amendments that have differing levels of support, but we want an amendment to be passed. Something has to happen. That's kind of our position. But I do want, we're 3 minutes past. We're going to finish up with our recorded session. And those of you who want to stick around and ask some questions and continue to have some discussion, not recorded, we can do that. And others who need to leave can do that. So I just want to say one more thing. We have some pretty exciting news next month at our meeting on December 9th. So we know what part of the agenda will be. It will be continuing this conversation. We'll cover a representative who is an advocate and how we moved him from a supporter to an advocate, and then what more we can do with him. And then we'll go into this special guest, who is Damon Effingham, who is currently the Federal Legislative Director for Represent Us. And we had, Vicky had a relationship to ask him, invite him to join us because he was the legislative staffer for Representative Dean Phillips in Minnesota, who is one of the representatives that she has a good working relationship with. And so Damon has agreed to come and be our guest speaker and talk to us about what's effective to work with congressional staff, and what does he think is important for democracy reform, advocacy, like what we're doing. So please join us, and we'll get sending a reminder on that. We'll send a follow-up email. It has a link to the information we discussed already tonight, documents for that. And then when the recording is available on YouTube, we'll forward a link to that as well. I just want to ask everybody to unmute and say good night, and we'll end the recording. And those of you who want to have further discussion, stick around. Good night.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Sam,
everybody.
for your guidance.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Bye.
Except I'm sticking around.
Night, thank you.